Thank you for watching. Subscribe on Deceived Husbands for more stories.
I work for a company that manufactures brake parts. Someone has to do it, and I'm one of the lucky ones. My shift runs from 2 to 10 every day, 5 days a week. I operate one of the oldest machines you've ever seen. I wear safety gear, earplugs, steel-toe boots, and a thick apron. I meet my quota daily, and if I'm lucky, I get a small bonus at the end of the year. I've got a modest 5-bedroom house, a beautiful wife, and 2 sons who are both in grade school. After 14 years of marriage, life was looking pretty good until today. At the plant, we have 6 stations that assemble the brake shoes, all powered by compressed air. In my 11 years there, we've never had a problem with the equipment. But today, halfway through my shift, the air system froze up. The air that operates our machines has to be perfectly dry, and it's usually filtered and dehydrated by equipment that never fails except for tonight. The dehydrator failed to vent the collected moisture, and I'm not a scientist, but I know that when moisture and high-pressure air mix, it causes freezing and everything grinds to a halt. Instead of having us sit around, they sent the whole crew home without pay, of course. I guess you could say my entire life was upended by high humidity. When I opened my bedroom door, the first thing I saw was a large, hairy back bouncing up and down on my wife, Emily. Instinctively, I turned on the overhead light. When I realized Emily wasn't sleeping, I blurted out, "Damn it, Emily, what the hell are you doing at home?" I expected her to be scared, apologetic, and ashamed. But instead, she was just furious. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. "Oh, don't be such a fool. You know perfectly well what's going on. I'm sorry you had to see this, but if you had come home when you were supposed to, this never would have happened." She said it like it was my fault that this guy was in my bed. The hairy back rolled over, and now this guy, let's call him Frank, was glaring at me with a smug look on his face. Emily half-heartedly pulled the covers up in an attempt at modesty. My big mistake was grabbing Frank as he came off the bed. He was a lot bigger than he looked lying down. My reward for this was 2 solid blows to the ribs. I didn't even get a punch in before I was on the floor, gasping for breath. I'm not sure, but I think I got a hit to the side of the head around that time, which knocked me out. The next thing I knew, I was in the hospital, getting my ribs bandaged by some medical tech. Emily was sitting in the chair beside the exam table, looking disgusted. "Emily, who the hell was that guy, and what was he doing in our house?" I asked, still trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. "His name is Robert. He's a friend of mine, and I invited him over," she said, without a hint of remorse. "You were having sex with him, in our bed, while our kids were just down the hall, sleeping." "Yes, I know. If you hadn't made such a scene, they wouldn't have woken up. I had to call my sister to come over and watch them so I could bring you here." "How long has this been going on?" "Robert and I have been seeing each other for about 4 months now. We've been trying to keep it a secret from you. We don't usually come to the house, but I couldn't get a sitter this time." "Is it over now?" "No, it's not over, David. You're a good father and a decent husband, but Robert is great in bed. I don't see any reason to end it just because it's out in the open. I promise we won't get together at the house anymore. It's not fair to you or the kids. I'm sorry, Emily, but that's not acceptable. It stops now. If you try to stop my relationship with Robert in any way, you'll regret it. You just got the crap beaten out of you, and Robert didn't even break a sweat. If you do or say anything, I guarantee it will happen again. Everyone we know will find out that your wife is screwing another man, and you're too much of a wimp to stop it. Our friends, neighbors, your coworkers, everyone will know. Even your sons will be embarrassed by you. Don't you care what anyone thinks of you? You'd make yourself look like a tramp just to put me down? I will if I have to, but I'm betting you won't take that chance. Robert thinks you're a joke, and I think he's right. You're going to have to learn to live with it, David." "Who is this guy anyway? Where does he work?" "He doesn't work, David. He owns Premier Cars, that luxury car place on Oak Street. You know, the one you've always wanted to visit but never did? That's it. He's richer than you, smarter than you, and better in bed than you. He's also stronger and better with his fists. Why don't you just marry him if he's so damn great? That's why I keep you around, darling. Robert doesn't like kids, and I'm not giving mine up just to be with him. You get to play house husband and daddy while Robert gets all the fun. What's so hard to understand?" and am supposed to be okay with this arrangement? You have no choice. Live with it, or the whole world will find out what a loser you are. By the way, I'm moving all your stuff into the guest room. We don't need to share a bed anymore now that the secret's out. I watched as Emily got up to leave. For a moment, I was almost relieved to see her go. Just curious, darling, but who watched the kids when you were out with Robert? My friend Sophia usually watched them, but sometimes I dropped them off at your parents' house. Oh, and by the way, Sophia was the one who introduced me to Robert. I made a mental note to thank Sophia as Emily left the room. They released me the next morning. Emily wasn't there. I had the choice of calling someone or taking a taxi. I opted for the taxi. The kids were in school, and Emily wasn't at home. All of my clothes and personal items were piled on the guest bed. I was sure that Ethan and Ryan would have questions about the new sleeping arrangements. I was going to let Emily explain it. It took less than an hour to set up my new living quarters. All sorts of ideas were running through my head, but one thing was certain: there was no way in hell this was going to play out as Emily planned it. The first thing I did was head to the basement and dig out my old phone recorder. It would only work on the landline, but it was better than nothing. Emily used her cell for most calls, but it only took 20 minutes to hook up the recorder and hide it behind some old paint cans. This was just the first step. I was feeling like crap, but I was good enough to go back to work. They gave me some painkillers, but I wasn't keen on taking them while operating machinery, so I stuck to a couple of Tylenols instead. One thing Emily had grossly miscalculated was my relationship with the guys at work. I told them everything that had happened the previous evening. They all had ideas, some good and some bad. It felt good to know that friends would be there for you when you needed them. We had an 8-hour shift ahead, and each guy was going to spend it thinking up ways to make things right. During the break, James was the first to speak up. I don't have an idea, but I do have a cousin who works at Premier Cars. He details the cars. From what I hear, he hates Robert. If you need any information about the business, the building, or the work shifts, he can help you. That could definitely be helpful, James. Anyone else? David, I've got 2 shotguns and a couple of pistols. You're welcome to any of them. None of them are registered, so there's no worry there. Thanks, Leon, but that's a bit more drastic than I was hoping for. Well, hell, you all want to hear my idea, then. There was some laughter at Mark's remark. Come on, Mark, tell us. I thought we could tie him to a tree and light a bonfire between his legs, you know, like the old cowboy movies. Everyone loved Mark's idea, but it was unanimously voted down. Adam hadn't said anything, so we all just looked at him. What? Don't look at me like that. Yeah, I got an idea, but it's sort of flaky. Spill it, Adam. I read somewhere about a prison in Arizona that dressed all the sex offenders in pink jumpsuits. It was supposed to be humiliating. I know Robert isn't a child molester, but something like that would embarrass the hell out of him. You mean put him in a pink jumpsuit? Wouldn't he just take it off? I was thinking that if you could get in there, tie him up, and spray paint him all over with pink paint, that might do the trick. But he'd know who did it. You'd have to knock him out first, then tie him to a chair until someone found him. How do we do that? With drugs or something? I can get a taser. Just sneak up and zap him. You make it sound easier than it probably is. How do we get close enough without him knowing? I don't have all the answers. I just thought it was an idea. The buzzer rang, and we went back to work for the rest of the shift. My quota was down, so the other guys chipped in to even it up. Emily was in bed when I got home. At least she kept her word about not bringing Robert into the house. I still had no clue what I was going to do. Most of what the guys and I talked about was like high school pranks. I needed real revenge. It was noon when I got up. The kids were at school, and I could hear Emily moving around the house. I grabbed a quick shower, shaved, and headed out the door. Good morning, husband. Don't you have a kiss for your wife? Emily stood by the kitchen sink with her hand on her hip, a smirk on her face. I just turned and walked out. Her smartass remark didn't deserve a response. I needed some lunch and some private time to think. I spent the rest of the afternoon killing time, trying to figure out what I could do to Robert without bringing too much havoc upon myself. I decided to stop taking meals at home. It was about the only time I got to spend with the boys, but I just couldn't stomach Emily's cooking anymore. Before I knew it, it was time for work. Things were pretty normal until the supper break. David, I got the taser in the car. I don't know if you can use it for anything, but at least you can have it for self-protection, Adam said proudly. Don't forget to pick it up before you go home. Have you ever used the damn thing? No, but we can try it out. Who wants to volunteer? The only response was a chorus of groans around the table. Nobody had any new ideas, but they were all willing to support anything I came up with. It felt good to have a few friends. Things were normal at home when I returned. It was going to be a short night. Working the night shift screws up your sleeping habits, especially on weekends. I was up earlier than usual. Ethan and Ryan jumped at the chance to spend time at Adventure Zone. Emily didn't seem to mind at all, especially when I told her we'd be out all day. David, I'm going to need you to take a few vacation days the week after next. Robert's friend Lucas is coming in from Los Angeles, and we're taking a 3-night, 4-day cruise to the Bahamas. If you can't do it, could you ask your parents? Let me get this straight. You're going on a cruise with 2 guys? That sounds sleazy, even for you. Don't be crude, David. Lucas is rooming with Sophia. They're old friends from a couple of years ago. Oh, well, that makes it all right then. I tried my best to sound sarcastic. Sophia was definitely getting a visit later. We started the day too early, so to kill some time before Adventure Zone opened, we visited the hobby store nearby. The boys loved putting together the plastic models. The results weren't spectacular, but they had fun. I left them to explore while I wandered around, marveling at all the stuff available for creative housewives to buy. If Emily had been into crafts, she wouldn't have brought home that hairy gorilla. Too late now. My eyes lit up when I discovered rows of designer paint and spray cans. There they were, 6 beautiful cans of pink paint in aerosol form. Not as much paint as the cans at Hardware Haven, but they were pink. I took this as a sign and bought all 6 cans. Todd chose a monster truck kit, and Ryan opted for a tugboat. I didn't even know they made plastic tugboat models. Before we left, I picked up a pack of 11 large plastic cable ties. They were 18 inches long and looked perfect for the job. By then, Adventure Zone was open. The kids killed about 4 hours and 2 pizzas before they burned out. We grabbed some bread and headed to the park. The ducks devoured it all in minutes, but we stuck around for a couple of hours before heading to my parents' house. Mom and Dad were happy to have us for supper and the evening. Ethan and Ryan spent most of the night in front of the TV, while I took the opportunity to brief Dad on the situation with Emily. It was kind of funny that I was actually telling people what was going on before Emily could. Her threat to expose me as a loser seemed worthless now. Dad promised they'd be there to take care of the boys, no matter what. That made things a lot easier. I didn't want the boys hurt by this situation. Around 9 p.m., I called Emily to let her know we were staying at my parents' house for the night. I got the machine. After a big breakfast at IHOP, we returned home to find Emily still in bed. I fired up the lawnmower and started in the back, by the bedrooms. Ethan and Ryan were eager to start on their models, even though it was a beautiful day outside. I let them go. I decided to make a full day of lawn work. There was edging and pruning to be done. It didn't go as fast as usual because I found myself stopping to chat a lot. I borrowed some hedge clippers from Robert across the street. His wife, Mary, was one of the biggest gossips in the neighborhood. I explained to Robert that there might be unfamiliar cars parked by the house because Emily would be entertaining some male friends. Everything should be fine unless they got rowdy. In that case, just call the police. It was hard for me to control things since I worked nights. George, who was on the board at the local church, wanted to know what I meant when I mentioned Emily's recent wild behavior. George was an even bigger gossip than Mary. 10 minutes later, he had enough fodder to last a month. I didn't break for lunch and finished work around 4 p.m. After a quick shower, I went to Charlie's Diner and ordered the most expensive meal on the menu. I wasn't sure what it was, but it was delicious. I spent the rest of the evening with my brother Dave and his family. Dad had already filled him in on what was going on. I spent the night on his couch. Emily's plan was to force me into submission by threatening to expose me as a loser if I didn't support her infidelity. She'd make my life miserable. It was an interesting idea, but it had a lot of holes. In less than a week, ID already told everyone what was going on, which pretty much nullified her threat. I was also able to make her look like a cheap tramp, something she hadn't anticipated. I stopped by the house the next afternoon to change for work, and a fuming Emily was waiting for me. "What the hell have you been telling the neighbors?" Sophia said you told everyone that I was running a brothel here at night. That's not true, Emily. I simply explained that you might be entertaining men while I'm at work, so they shouldn't get excited about it. Well, that's not how it's spreading around. Who else have you been talking to? Everyone. I figured I'd tell them before you did. It seemed easier that way. I didn't say anything to your parents or your sisters. You should probably do that before they hear the rumors. Damn it, David. You're making me look like a tramp. Well, that's only fair. You were going to make me look like a fool. Sorry, darling, but I've got to get to work. I got to spend some time with the boys before heading out. The hardest part was not getting the quality time I wanted with them. James had the best news of the night. Premier Cars closed at 9 p.m. on Wednesday nights so that Robert could personally make out the paychecks for Friday. He hated being disturbed while doing payroll, so even the cleaning crew was gone. Adam took a few minutes to show me how to use the taser. Nobody volunteered to test it. The plan was coming together. If I got caught, and I fully expected to, I'd probably be looking at jail time. I didn't care. Robert had to be humiliated. If I got arrested, I'd make sure all the newspapers and TV stations got the full story. Any publicity would crush him, or at least piss him off enough to do something dumb. For the next few days, I went home only to sleep, shower, and change clothes. I hadn't eaten a meal at home since that first day. Finally, Wednesday arrived. I arranged for my truck to have a dead battery, so Adam picked me up. The floor supervisor rarely bothered the break guys as long as we met our quotas and maintained quality. One thing that worked in my favor was the loose dress code for the job. Between the apron, gloves, and welding goggles, we all looked pretty much alike. At 8:30 p.m., I slipped out the back door. The guys took turns covering my station. One of their posts would be vacant, but no one cared. Bathroom. Breaks were routine and never controlled. The main thing was to create the illusion that I never left. I walked into the employee's door at Premier Cars and headed straight for the bathroom. Around 9 p.m., someone made a quick check before turning off the lights. 10 minutes later, I put on some latex gloves and walked out of the bathroom into a dimly lit office area. Robert's desk overlooked the showroom, so his back was to the door. It looked like this would be easier than I expected. He had a computer in front of him but was punching numbers on an old adding machine with paper tape. He never heard me approach. I hit Robert with the taser right on the back of his neck. His body jerked upright, and I thought he might turn around, so I hit him again. This time, he twitched a few times, then relaxed. Perfect. I put 2 plastic cable ties on each leg and 2 on each arm. ID brought along an old necktie to use as a blindfold. He was being very cooperative. I wheeled his chair over to the glass window by the showroom. He'd be in full view when his employees arrived in the morning. The paint was a pretty pink, but I had to use a lot more than expected. It was being absorbed into his clothes as fast as I sprayed it on. It took at least 3 coats in any one area to show up like I wanted. I barely had enough paint to finish the job. He looked pretty in pink when I was done. I carefully packed everything up. I expected Robert to wake up while I was decorating him, but he never moved. I had planned to remove the blindfold before leaving, but I checked my watch several times and started to worry. I tried to feel for a pulse with no success. Maybe it was the latex gloves. I took one off and tried again. Still no pulse. I checked for a pulse on his neck like ID seen on TV. Nothing. I removed the blindfold and touched his eyeball with a pencil tip. No blink, no reflex. Needless to say, I started to panic. I had the presence of mind to put the latex glove back on and wipe down everything I might have touched. I put the necktie in my pocket and then cut off all the plastic ties. The pink paint left marks where they had been, making Robert look like a pink raccoon. I took a minute to make sure I hadn't overlooked anything, then left for work. I dumped everything, including the taser, into a storm drain on the way back to the plant. 10 minutes later, I was back making brake shoes. Nobody noticed my absence. As soon as the shift was over, I told the guys what happened. They were all accessories now, so I was confident they wouldn't say anything. Mark was impressed. None of them seemed worried. Adam drove me home, and we both made a mental note of the time he dropped me off. I didn't get to sleep long. Around 10 a.m., Emily barged into my room. "What the hell did you do? What did you do, you bastard?" Of course, I just rolled over and gave her a perplexed look. What are you talking about, woman? Robert's dead. Sophia called and said they found him in his office this morning, dead. I believe you had something to do with it, and I'll make sure you pay. That was the second time she called me a bastard in 5 minutes. It was clear I wasn't getting any more sleep, so I stumbled out of bed and hit the bathroom. I wasn't in a hurry to face the Wicked Witch of the West, so I took a long hot shower and a slow shave. I even put on some aftershave just to annoy my loving wife. I never made it to the coffee pot. A tall man in a dark suit was standing in the living room, talking to Emily. She'd called the cops. I shook my head and walked into the kitchen to get my first cup of the day. Emily had a sarcastic smirk on her face as I sat in my favorite recliner. My uninvited guest sat down when I did. Mr. Grayson, I'm Detective Marcus Green. I'm here about the death of Robert Anderson last night. Your wife mentioned that you and Mr. Anderson had a disagreement last week, and I'd like to ask you a few questions. Sure, but not here. What do you mean? If you want to talk, let's do it at your office, not in my home. Is that okay? Emily frowned. She clearly expected to be included in the discussion. My car or yours, Mr. Grayson? I've got some errands to run, so I'll meet you there. Second floor, room 202. Turn right when you get off the elevator. See you shortly. Emily was fuming as I put on my shoes. I didn't get to finish my coffee, so I dumped it in the sink. I smiled as I walked out the door. I guess you're going to get what you wanted, sweetheart. What are you talking about, David? 10 minutes later, I was sitting with Detective Parker on the second floor of the municipal building. For the next hour, he asked all the right questions, and I had all the right answers. He was trying to be discreet about the affair without ignoring it or rubbing it in my face. I admitted I had a motive, but insisted I never got a chance to act on it. It was a serious situation, but I tried to be congenial without being a smartass. I think he appreciated that I made his job easier, even though I didn't give him a clear answer. The most interesting part of the discussion was finding out that Robert died from a heart issue. He had a pacemaker installed a few years ago, and it didn't mix well with the taser. Of course, they knew about the taser from the marks on his neck. I felt bad that Robert died, but I was also relieved. Detective Parker gave me the usual don't leave town speech and said he'd get back to me after verifying my alibi. Wow, I never thought I'd need an alibi for anything. It was sort of exciting. We parted on good terms. I got the feeling that Detective Parker was on my side. It made me feel warm inside. I grabbed a bite to eat and watched the news. There was a brief mention of Robert's death, noting that he had no relatives in the area. I emptied the bank accounts and then treated myself to a nice breakfast. There were things to be done at home. Emily wasn't there when I got back. It took me 30 minutes to move all my stuff back into the master bedroom and all of Emily's things into the guest room. The guest room had one small closet and one dresser. I piled everything on the bed for her to put away. I checked the phone recorder in the basement, but there was nothing significant on it. I gathered all the banking and insurance records, along with other important papers. I was glad Emily's Honda was in my name. That would make things easier. Everything went into a folder under the front seat of my truck. I called work and took 2 weeks vacation. A few hours later, my loving wife showed up. She seemed surprised to find me at home. It was time to get things in order again. I smiled as I led her to the guest room. What the hell is this? Who do you think you are? Her response was a big smile. Answer me. Damn it. What's going on? Emily, I'll be staying in the master bedroom from now on. You can have the guest room. Start putting your clothes away. Anything not in the closet or dresser by supper time will be thrown out. Any questions? I can't fit my stuff in that little closet, and am not staying in that room anyway. What do you mean, thrown out? If you can't fit it in the closet or dresser, you don't need it. This isn't going to happen, David. I don't know what game you're playing, but it won't work. You're a dead man. I suggest you start putting things in order. Any more questions? They'll check back later, sweetheart. That was the third time today she called me a dead man. I must be doing something right. While Emily was busy in the guest room, I dumped her purse on the kitchen table. I took my time collecting everything I wanted: her cell phone, car keys, driver's license, credit cards, debit cards, and cash. I put everything else back. I got her car title out of the truck and drove the Honda across town to a friend who owned a car lot. I sold it to him at a good price with the agreement that he'd wholesale it out of town. Even with the payoff, I pocketed a few thousand. I was just about to walk into Taco Bell for lunch when my cell phone rang. You bastard. What did you do with my cell phone, and where's my car? It was good that she didn't call me a dead man again. She was calling from the house phone, which was a good test. I could check the recorder when I got home. I'm sorry, honey. I needed money for a lawyer to defend me against the murder charges. I'll get you another car as soon as I get out of jail. She was still cussing when I hung up and turned off my phone. After that call, I decided I really did need a lawyer. No matter what happened, I wasn't staying married. But that would have to wait. I was next in line to order. Ethan and Ryan were home when I got back. I went straight to my sons and ignored Emily altogether. I glanced her way a few times and noticed she wasn't happy. The boys were eager to show me the models they'd put together. When Emily started cooking supper, I wandered down the hall to the guest room. All my clothes were back on the bed. All of Emily's clothes were back in the master bedroom. I snickered to myself, but decided not to fight it. She was stubborn and determined. Later that evening, I treated myself to Ocean Grill. Money was no object, and I still had cash left after giving the divorce lawyer a deposit. The shrimp and lobster combo was great, but the cheese rolls were still my favorite. When I finished my meal, I turned my phone back on. I hoped one of the guys from work or Detective Parker would call. No such luck. My first call was from Emily. David, how am I supposed to go to the grocery store? We need milk and a few other things. I'll take you when I get home. Let's arrange to do the shopping on Saturdays when I'm off work. It'll feel better if you didn't do it alone. Oh, I've got another call. We'll talk later. The second call was from Adam. Detective Parker interviewed the whole crew, both individually and as a group. All the stories held up. The floor manager was the strongest supporter. He insisted there was no way you could have missed work. He kept a tight rein on his guys and could guarantee you were there all night. I knew I wasn't that clever. If a criminal investigator wanted to prove I killed Robert, I'm sure they could. But I was starting to feel like nobody cared. I got home just in time to put the boys to bed. Emily was sitting on the couch with a glass of wine. I grabbed a cold one from the fridge and got comfortable in my recliner. The TV wasn't on, so I figured it was a good time to talk. So, Emily, how's the plan to turn me into a loser coming along? Well, that ended the conversation before it started. She finished her wine, got up, and left for her bedroom. I thought she wanted to talk. I guess I was wrong. I took my beer and went to check the recorder. The first call was to her sister. Lisa knew all about the affair with Robert and was supporting Emily in every way. That was good to know. The next call was to Emily's mom, and it was different. Mom had no idea what was going on. Her daughter convinced her that Robert was a friend of Sophia's and that I was jealous because I had been trying to sleep with Sophia for years. Robert gave me a lecture, and I got mad. She didn't say I killed him, but she sure implied it. Emily called the cell phone company to see if she could get a replacement phone, but they wouldn't help. She then called the DMV to report that I took her driver's license, but they told her to report it to the police. Finally, she called the bank for a replacement credit card but was told the account was closed. I will say this: she was a busy little girl. The last call was to Sophia. She lived just a few houses away, so I don't know why they used the phone instead of just getting together. It was to my benefit. I learned two important things: Lucas was still coming in from Los Angeles, and Emily was going to lay low and not make any waves until he arrived. The boys and I were up bright and early the next day. We were out of the house before Emily was awake. We got home after lunch, and Emily insisted I drive her to the grocery store. She needed things, and since she no longer had a car or a driver's license, I had to take care of it. That night, while she cooked supper, I checked the recorder. Lucas had arrived, and the first person he called was Emily. It was an interesting conversation. He believed everything Emily told him and vowed revenge. Lucas and Robert grew up together, and he wouldn't let this go. He gave Emily the number where he was staying and told her to call him when she had a chance. Emily immediately called Sophia and gushed about how happy she was. I couldn't believe this was the woman I'd been married to all these years. The change was so sudden and complete. I had no idea what I'd done to deserve this, aside from killing her lover. I went out for a burger before going to bed. The lawn needed mowing again, so the next day, I had a good excuse to avoid Emily. Around 11 a.m., Emily's parents came to pick up the boys. I had no idea a sleepover with the in-laws had been planned, but I didn't protest it. Tomorrow was a school day, and Grandma promised they'd be there on time. I was anxious to check the phone recorder, but lunch came first since ID missed breakfast. After a quick shower, I was off to Denny's. Emily never said a thing about me no longer eating at home. Emily and Lucas had set up a plan to avenge Robert's death. The whole thing was comical. I guess it wouldn't have been if I didn't know what was going on. After Emily and I went to bed, Lucas was going to enter the house through the sliding door off the back deck. She promised him it would be unlocked. If everything went according to plan, it would look like I was shot during a burglary attempt. Emily and Sophia would both call 911 when they heard the shot. I know it sounds stupid, but at that moment, I remembered I hadn't changed the beneficiaries on my insurance policies. I threw Emily a sarcastic kiss as I walked out the door and got a middle finger in response. I had supper with my parents and spent the evening there. Before I left, I borrowed Dad's short-barreled 20-gauge shotgun. It would be perfect for the evening party. Emily was in bed when I got home, but her light was on, so I assumed she was reading. The only call on the recorder was from Sophia, bragging about the great time she and Lucas had all afternoon. Before saying goodbye, she promised Emily she'd be ready later that night. It took me about 20 minutes to replace the buckshot in the shells with rock salt. I didn't want to kill Lucas, just slow him down. Hell, I didn't want to kill Robert either. I hoped Lucas didn't have a bad ticker like Robert. I wanted to check the back door but was afraid Lucas might see me. I had to assume Emily left it unlocked. I stripped down to my shorts and messed up the bed. A cup of coffee would have been nice, but there was none, so I settled for a Coke. I waited in my recliner with the cell phone by my side. He didn't show up until after midnight. As soon as I saw him on the deck, I dialed 911 and reported an intruder in my house. I was careful to say I feared for my life. I didn't hang up the phone. The patio door slid open, and there was Lucas. I waited until he was completely inside the house, then gave him the first blast. I aimed low, not wanting to kill him. The first shot knocked him back onto the deck. The second one hit him, and he fell over the side, breaking the railing. I knew I didn't kill him because he was howling like a stuck pig. That rock salt must really hurt. The sound of the shotgun blast was deafening inside the house. My ears were ringing like crazy. I flipped on the lights, and in seconds, Emily was standing in the living room, screaming. She was yelling words at me, but I couldn't make them out. I walked over to see how Lucas was and saw a .22 pistol with a silencer attached on the floor. Emily was still screaming, so I pointed the shotgun in her direction. She quickly shut up and ran out of the room. It looked like Lucas broke his ankle when he fell. Some guys have all the luck. 10 minutes later, the first police car arrived. There wasn't much discussion. I laid the shotgun on the floor to avoid any misunderstandings. I pointed to the phone, and one of the officers informed the 911 operator that everything was under control. They asked who else was in the house, and I told them about Emily in the bedroom. They brought her into the living room and discovered they'd made a mistake. Her mouth was running a mile a minute. I tried to block it out as the police tried to shut her up. Neither of us was successful. Finally, a large female officer gently took her arm and led her outside. I noticed Sophia standing with some other neighbors. I smiled at her and slowly drew my index finger across my throat. She quickly walked away without returning my smile. The EMT unit arrived for Lucas at the same time as Detective Parker. He smiled when he saw me, and I responded with a big grin. I wasn't trying to be a smartass, but I couldn't help myself. The female officer brought Emily back inside to get dressed. She had calmed down a little. After I got dressed, we all headed to the police station. I insisted on separate cars, so Detective Parker let me ride with him. We didn't talk on the way downtown, but he did look over and smile again. It was daylight when Green let me go. We only talked for about 30 minutes, but they kept me there all night. I felt like I was at Guantanamo because they made me drink coffee the whole time. One of the police cars drove me home. I was a little disappointed not to see yellow tape around the house. The place looked like nothing had happened. The rock salt didn't even break. The sliding glass door. I guess Lucas got most of it. It would take about an hour to fix the busted railing. I hit the bed and didn't get up until after lunch. After emptying my bladder, I staggered into the kitchen and found my friendly detective sitting at the table, reading the paper and drinking fresh coffee, which I assumed he made while I was sleeping. I had enough coffee the night before, so I settled for a large glass of OJ and sat across from him. I have no idea how he got into the house. "You're one cool customer, Mr. Grayson." He didn't look up from the paper. I didn't know how to respond, so I said nothing. I couldn't tell if he was messing with me or what. He finished his coffee. "Detective Parker, I need a shower, a shave, and some lunch." "Ilby, unless that's against police policy." "Take your time, David. I've got all day." As I walked to the shower, I wondered when he slept. Lunch was 2 big pulled pork sandwiches. Green even joined me in washing it down with a beer. Neither of us said anything, and after a while, the silence became overwhelming. "You're dying to ask me some questions, aren't you, David?" "Funny, but I was thinking the same about you." My detective friend waved the waiter over and ordered 2 more drafts. "I spent all night asking you questions. It's your turn now." "Okay. For starters, where's my wife?" "We're still holding her. She'll be charged this afternoon." I finished my beer. "Your wife's parents got her a lawyer." I didn't expect that. Now I had 100 more questions, but the more I asked, the more I risked exposing myself. I decided it was better to back off. It was nice to see Emilia's family was there for her because I wasn't going to be. "I don't have any more questions, Detective Parker, but if you feel the need to unburden yourself, feel free to start anytime." He took a big swig of beer and laughed, not loudly, but a definite laugh. "One more thing. Did you happen to overhear or maybe tape any conversations your wife had with Mr. Williams?" "I assume you mean Lucas?" That got me a little sneer. "If I did have such a tape, would you need it?" "I don't know yet. If things go as I think, it won't matter. But if one of them gets a good lawyer, maybe. If I had such a tape, wouldn't that get me in trouble?" "You're right. I'm just trying to make my job easier. They'll see what I can do without a tape that may or may not exist." I nodded a little. "Thank you. David, I think I should take you home. Your boys will be getting back from school soon, and they need their father." We arrived at the house just as the school bus dropped off Ethan and Ryan. They walked over, and I introduced them to my new detective friend. They wanted to see his badge. Everything seemed pleasant until Green leaned forward and said, "Now, which one of you built the tugboat, and which one built the monster truck?" "I built the truck," shouted Ethan, puffing out his chest. "I did the tugboat. Do you want to see it?" Ryan was just as proud. "Maybe you'll get a chance next time." "I've got to go now." He left me standing there stunned and walked to his car with a big grin on his face. The bastard knew about the pink paint. He had me by the balls, and I couldn't do a damn thing about it. We ordered pizza that night. The boys never asked where their mom was. After supper, Emily's dad called and said he needed help raising bail money to get her out of jail. I tried to be as polite as possible when I turned him down. I wasn't sure he understood what was going on, but at least he was trying to be a good father. I asked where she would stay. He hesitated and then said she'd be staying with him. The boys and I loaded all of Emily's things into the pickup and dropped them off. We had no trouble gathering everything. When we got home, I noticed a moving truck in Sophia's driveway. It was gone the next morning. Emily never called me. I had to read the newspaper every day to find out what was happening. Nobody told me anything. It was almost like I was being left out on purpose. There was no trial. Emily blamed everything on Lucas. Lucas claimed it was her idea. Both took plea deals. Emily got 3 to 5 years for conspiracy to commit murder. Lucas got 5 to 11 years for attempted murder. Some federal people were interested in the silencer Lucas had with him, but they decided to wait until he finished his first sentence before bringing charges. Detective Parker didn't need the tape and never mentioned it again. Sophia vanished, never to be seen or heard from again. My dad was glad to get his shotgun back and promised I could borrow it again if needed. He was snickering when he said that. I had Emily served with divorce papers as soon as she started her jail term. She didn't protest. I got the feeling she didn't want anything to do with me. I sold the house and moved back in with my parents. I couldn't work and watch the boys myself. The guys at work were happy to have me back. I was offered the chance to switch to the day shift, but I turned it down. I took the boys to visit their mother at the state prison every month. I waited in the car because they were usually there less than an hour. Sometimes, in good weather, the meetings were outside. I could park and watch them through the chain-link fence. I never asked them about the visits, and I asked them not to tell me anything. It seemed to work fine for all of us. Things were running smoothly until I got a phone call. "Hello, Is this David Grayson? Yes. My name is Angela Morris. Detective Parker said I should call you. There are things we need to discuss. I know Detective Parker, but why do you want to talk to me? Robert Anderson was my brother. Just when I thought all this crap was behind me, something like this happens. I don't think that would be a good idea. I'm sorry for your loss, but I can't help you. I hung up before she could say anything else. 2 days later, she called again. David, I'd appreciate it if you could come to see me. There are some things I need to say. Detective Parker said you were a reasonable man. Where do you want to meet? I'd prefer the auto showroom, but anywhere you're comfortable is fine. It took me a moment to come up with something. They'll meet you Saturday morning at 10 at the showroom. I'm bringing my sons. They like looking at old cars. I didn't know what she had in mind, but I felt safer in a public place with the boys along. I wasn't using them as a shield, but I felt she'd be less likely to try anything if I had them with me. I had no idea what sort of grudge this woman might harbor. If she was Robert's sister, she might be Italian. If she was Italian, she must be hot-blooded. If she was hot-blooded, I had to be careful. At this point, I realized I was overthinking the whole thing. I needed a beer. I called Detective Parker and asked what was going on. He laughed and told me to meet with her and stop worrying. Easy for him to say, didn't kill her brother. Premier Cars was an impressive place. In addition to the main showroom, there were 2 large buildings in the back holding cars needing restoration or waiting for space on the showroom floor. I was shocked to see they were having a grand opening celebration. I wasn't expecting that. There were a lot of things I didn't understand. Ryan and Ethan were torn between the cars and the freebies. The first thing that hit me was the smell of popcorn. A guy with floppy shoes and a rubber nose handed out small bags of hot, popped kernels. Off to the side was a soda machine and another clown with a hot dog cart. The boys wouldn't need lunch today. It wasn't difficult to recognize Angela Morris. I knew immediately when I saw her walking toward me with a slow, determined gait. Everything about her screamed Italian: dark hair, dark eyes, olive skin, and broad hips. I guess a gentleman wouldn't have noticed her hips, but they were emphasized by her height. 5 feet, if that. Robert was enormous, and his sister was short and wide. I felt a little anxious as she approached, then noticed the smaller clone by her side. The young girl looked about 10 and was the spitting image of Angela, except her hair was a tad lighter, and naturally, she had no hips. It seemed my hostess was covering herself the same way I was. We were a pitiful pair, both using our kids for security. As she closed the gap, her hand came out in a friendly gesture. David Grayson, I presume? It was only natural and polite to shake her hand. I always wanted to say that, like in the movie about Dr. Livingstone. She smiled but seemed a little nervous, which made me feel a tad better. I stood there like a mute, so she continued. This is my daughter, Isabella. Isabella smiled at the boys, and Ethan smiled back politely and said his name. But Ryan held out his hand with a grin. Isabella, why don't you show the boys around while I talk to their dad? Ryan immediately followed Isabella to the showroom, while Ethan headed for the hot dog stand. I took that as a good sign. We can talk here or in my office. Your choice. The office is fine. Those were the first words out of my mouth. As we walked toward the stairs to the elevated office, I noticed several employees looking my way and whispering. Angela noticed too and smiled at my discomfort. The salesmen on the floor wore blue bowling shirts for the opening, so they were easy to spot. Unfortunately, they seemed more interested in me than the customers. One guy at the far end of the building gave me a big smile and a thumbs up. I smiled back but felt nervous. Did Detective Parker tell you anything about my situation? I didn't reply, just shook my head. I don't want to bore you with my life story, but you need to know a little. Robert was my brother and only family. When he died, he didn't have a will. Since I was the only relative, I inherited the business. The executor took a big chunk, but I still got more than I expected. I was glad to see someone got something good out of the mess. While she talked, I noticed her pierced ears, wedding ring, and a small silver cross around her neck. I had a hard time seeing it because my eyes kept focusing on her cleavage. I started to remember how long it had been since I'd had sex when she interrupted me. David, are you paying attention? It was a trick question. She was smiling when she asked. I'm sorry, I was just admiring your crucifix. I told myself to look at her eyes and pay attention when she punched me in the arm. Would you like a beer? That's a good idea. There was a mini fridge by the desk, and she had to bend over to get the drinks. 1 minute I was forced to look at her cleavage, and the next, a beautiful but was in my face. She wasn't explaining things, she was trying to seduce me. Maybe it wasn't intentional, but it was working. She popped the tab and handed me the can. Careful not to bend over. We both took a few swigs without saying anything. Well, Ms. Morris, I'm glad things worked out for you, but I don't see why I'm here. I should get back to the boys before they start to worry. Call me Angela. Can I call you David? Of course. Are we done here? No? Damn it. Just sit there until I finish. Detective Parker said you'd understand. I didn't answer. If I kept quiet, she'd finish faster. Robert was a bastard. He was a no-good son of a bitch and deserved to die. As strange as it sounds, I wanted to thank you. It was a trap. That damn detective was setting me up. Was the room bugged? Or was it her? She could easily have a bug hidden in her bra. Damn it. I was looking at her cleavage again. Are you wearing a wire or some recording device? Of course not. Why would I do that? I finished my beer, still not convinced. Maybe I should check on the boys. I wouldn't want them to get into trouble. Just sit. She seemed definite about that. There was no love lost between Robert and me. 3 years ago, my husband was killed in an accident. He had no life insurance, and the guy who hit him had no insurance either. I had no job skills and a daughter to raise. Robert was my only family, so I asked him for help. He paid part of my husband's funeral expenses, and that was it. He wouldn't even return my calls. You're saying his death was good for you? Yes, and apparently for you too. Maybe we should both be thankful and let it go. Angela smiled and finished her beer. You don't want to talk about this anymore, do you? I nodded and started to stand. I need a favor. You're the only one who can help me. What could I possibly do for you? I want you to come work for me as general manager. You're crazy. I don't know anything about cars, especially fancy ones like you have. I know that. I have people for that stuff. What do you need me for? Angela seemed nervous. She looked at her feet, the walls, and back at me. Her eyes darted around as she tried to find the right words. Did you see how my people looked at you when we walked to the office? Yes, they weren't smiling. They all think you killed Robert. Not only did you kill him, but you made a laughingstock out of him. They were all afraid of Robert. Now they're afraid of you. Their fear is like respect. Do you understand? They don't respect you? No. They're going to rip me off, and I can't stop them. I'm not smart enough or tough enough to keep them in line. What good could I do? Mostly just be here. After a while, we'll learn the business well enough to control what's going on. Until then, I need you to intimidate them. I'm a nice guy, Angela. That's why Robert and Emily tried to take advantage of me. She seemed more comfortable now. That didn't work out too well for them, did it? For some strange reason, I found that funny and laughed a little. For the next 30 minutes, Angela and I talked terms. She easily exceeded the pay and benefits I was getting at the factory. If things didn't work out, I could always go back. I didn't really want to go back. I wanted things to work out. Ethan didn't look too good when we went back downstairs. Too many hot dogs and too much soda. Ryan, on the other hand, was having a great time. He spent more time talking to Isabella than looking at the cars. That was a good sign. Ethan threw up in the truck on the way home and skipped supper. I started work that Monday. Things went exactly as Angela predicted. I was amazed at how quickly I familiarized myself with the operation. I got close to a few employees and soon had eyes and ears on the floor. The guy who smiled at me on the first day was Jameis' cousin, my strongest supporter. Most employees wanted the business to succeed and were willing to rat out the bad apples. Angela let me handle the firings, and I discovered I enjoyed it. I was living up to my reputation. Detective Parker stopped in for coffee several times, but the conversation was light and friendly. I finally got him to open up. 3 years ago, I was a cop in Los Angeles. One day, I came home and found my wife in bed with my supervisor. I beat the crap out of them and threw my wife out. The department gave me the choice of quitting or getting fired. A week later, I had a job here. Before I left, I made sure the bastard who was sleeping with my wife got fired too. I didn't push for more. It was his business. At least I understood why he seemed to be on my side. The boys agreed not to mention my new job to their mother on visiting days. They made a few comments about the long drive, but seemed to understand there was no way out of it. I felt it was important for Emily to see her sons not for her benefit, but so I could rub salt in the wounds. I know it's a rotten way to use your kids, but I got some mean pleasure out of it. Angela and I spent more time together at work and after work. One weekend, the boys insisted I take her and Isabella to Riverside Park. Most of the time, we stayed closer to home. The living arrangements complicated any chance at romance. I was definitely interested in a closer relationship with Angela, but it wasn't convenient. I was still living at my parents' house with the boys, and Angela and Isabella had a small apartment. Since the business was doing better than expected, Angela started talking about buying a house. She spent a lot of time searching online for the perfect one. I got my first wake-up call when she explained why she wanted a 4-bedroom place. David, I think it's important the boys each have their own room. It's better to take care of things like that now than to do it later. Don't you agree? I realized immediately the question was a setup. Angela clearly felt I was more than just an employee. The potential for romance was looking better. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. A split-bedroom plan would be good too. I don't like the idea of them being too close to the master bedroom. I walked out of the office right after saying that and noticed a small smile on her face. It was a strange relationship. We hadn't had sex or even kissed, but I felt closer to her than I did to Emily after 14 years. 2 days later, when my divorce from Emily was final, we all went to Ocean Grill to celebrate. The kids didn't know the reason for the party, but Angela did. Later, back at the apartment, the kids were watching a movie when Angela cornered me in the kitchen and kissed me. We were hugging and laughing a little when Isabella walked in. "Whoops, sorry, Mom." As she turned to leave, she added, "It's about time." When we returned to the living room, Isabella was whispering to Ryan, and they were both smiling. Angela and I were on our best behavior for the rest of the evening, but I was looking forward to whatever was next. The next day, while the kids were in school, Angela and I took a long lunch and went back to the apartment. Both of us had a lot of pent-up energy, and we ended up spending most of the afternoon together, making up for lost time. We didn't get back to work until just before quitting time, but no one seemed to notice. After that, long lunches became a regular thing, and Angela started getting serious about finding a house. We began looking at properties together, and it wasn't long before we found the perfect place. It was a beautiful 4-bedroom house with a large backyard, perfect for the boys to run around in. The split-bedroom plan I had suggested was ideal: 2 bedrooms on one side for the kids and the master bedroom on the opposite end of the house, offering us some much-needed privacy. The house had a large kitchen, a spacious living room, and a cozy den where we could unwind after long days at work. Angela was thrilled, and so was I. It felt like we were building a new life together, one that was far removed from the chaos of the past. The boys were excited about the move too, especially when they saw the huge backyard and the potential for all sorts of outdoor adventures. Once we moved in, life seemed to fall into place. Angela and I settled into a comfortable routine. We worked together during the day, and in the evenings, we enjoyed family time with the kids. On weekends, we explored our new neighborhood, tried out local restaurants, and hosted small gatherings at our home. It felt like a fresh start, a chance to build something solid and lasting. One evening, after we'd been in the new house for a couple of months, Angela and I were sitting on the back deck, watching the sunset and sipping wine. The boys were inside, playing video games, and the air was filled with the sounds of their laughter. I looked over at Angela, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely content. "You know, David," she said, turning to me with a smile, "I never thought I'd find someone like you after everything that happened with Robert, but I'm glad I did." I reached out and took her hand. "I'm glad I found you too, Angela. I never thought I'd get a second chance at this." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just enjoying each other's company. Then Angela leaned in closer, her expression turning serious. "I've been thinking," she began, "about what happened with Emily and Robert, how everything went down." I nodded, not sure where she was going with this. "I don't have any regrets, David," she continued, "but I do think we've both been through enough. I don't want to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering if the past is going to catch up with us." "I don't either," I agreed. but I think we've done a pretty good job of putting all that behind us." Angela smiled again, this time with a hint of mischief in her eyes. "Good, because I was thinking we could make it official. Maybe a small wedding, just family and close friends. What do you think?" The idea took me by surprise, but in a good way. The thought of marrying Angela felt right, like the natural next step in the life we were building together. "I think that sounds perfect," I said, squeezing her hand. We spent the next few weeks planning the wedding. It was going to be a small ceremony in our backyard, with just a few close friends and family members. The boys were excited about the idea, especially when they found out they'd get to be part of the ceremony. As the big day approached, I couldn't help but think about everything that had led us to this point. It had been a long, complicated journey, full of unexpected twists and turns. But in the end, it had brought Angela and me together, and that made all the struggle worth it. On the day of the wedding, the weather was perfect clear skies and warm sunshine. Angela looked stunning in a simple white dress, and I felt like the luckiest man alive as I watched her walk down the aisle. The boys stood proudly by our sides, and Detective Parker, who had become a good friend over the past year, even showed up to wish us well. The ceremony was short and sweet, just like we wanted it. As we exchanged vows, I felt a sense of peace and happiness that I hadn't felt in a long time. This was my new life, my new beginning, and I was ready to embrace it with everything I had. After the ceremony, we celebrated with a small reception in the backyard. There was good food, plenty of laughter, and a lot of love in the air. As the sun began to set, Angela and I stole a moment away from the guests to sit on the deck, just like we had the night she proposed. "This is it," she said softly, resting her head on my shoulder. "Our new life." I wrapped my arm around her and pulled her close. "Yeah, it is. And I couldn't be happier." As we sat there, watching the last rays of the sun disappear over the horizon, I knew that no matter what the future held, we'd face it together. The past was behind us, and our new life had just begun. Thanks for sticking around till the end. What do you think about David's journey? Was his revenge justified? Would you have done something different? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you next time.